Hi guys! With today's pet portrait, I'm doing a picture of two dogs in Inktense. The original picture that I was working from had a dark background and strong lighting in the foreground, so the method that I was using for the background in this piece of going from light to dark didn't really work out the way that I wanted it to. Partway through this video, you will see that I paint over the background and start over, so bear with me on this first bit. It will be more like a demonstration in what not to do. In previous drawings, I had gone way too dark too early, and that was something that I was trying to avoid with this piece. That's why I was working from light to dark. I'd also not done a grassy landscape before, at least not one in which I had achieved a realistic look. So my goal with this piece was to tackle the challenge of doing a grassy background and foreground and have it look realistic. The problem with doing this in Inktense and going from light to dark was that the color underneath my brushstrokes was not dark enough to let the brushstrokes themselves indicate the depth and texture of the grass. Because of that, I had to go in between the brushstrokes with a darker color to give better definition to the grass, and I felt like that was taking way too long. I stopped to work on the dogs for a bit, giving myself a break from the background. I used the wet into wet method for the initial layers of shading, putting down clean water first, and then painting in diluted colors for the shadows. By doing it wet into wet, I was able to get a soft, even tone without having brush strokes or streaks. I wanted to build up the general shadowed areas first, and leave the details to last. You'll see that I painted the dog's tongue green. It's not going to stay that way. For the areas that have a deeper, richer color, like the red in the tongue, if I put down a layer of the complementary color first, it pushes back the shadowed area without taking away from the intensity of the color. I move back to the background, trying to darken things up and get it looking closer to realism. I had used masking fluid to keep some of the blades of grass white to preserve the highlights, and then went over top of those highlights with yellow to push them back, and tried going in with the Inktense pencils to bring out the detail, but I got really frustrated and felt that there must be a better way to do it. It's at this point that I had stopped to try out a different method on a separate piece of paper, and having liked the new result, I decided to start the background over. I painted in the whole background with a mixture of black and dark blue. I came over top of the black with a lighter and lighter colors, letting the brushstrokes do the texture work for me. I would start at the fence where the grass was furthest away and layer my brushstrokes over top of each other, getting larger and longer as I came forward. The magenta was an experiment in trying to add bright, vibrant color in the undertone to add interest and contrast. By leaving bits of the black and magenta colors show through the green, I was able to achieve the depth and texture that I wanted without having to shade in and around every little blade of grass. Once I have the texture in the grass to where I want it, I move back onto the dogs and start deepening those shadows using the finer paintbrush and trying to get in the clumps of fur in the dog's fur. I don't use the pencils hardly at all for the dogs. I just use it for the eyes where the pupils are really dark black and a couple other little areas, but for the most part I stick to using just the paintbrush to darken up those shadowed areas and add the fur texture. In the final stages, I darken up the contrast in the two dogs and add the final details, and lastly I glaze a brighter green color over the grass, since I wanted to capture the vibrant green that was present in the original reference photo. And that's it for this piece. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.